Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael Westbrook. As always, thank you for watching this video. Today we're talking about getting great guitar tone, and more specifically, thinking about our guitar sound within the musical context that it is sitting in, not just thinking about how our guitar sounds by itself. As a jumping off point, we're going to take a look at two great overdrives from Great Eastern Effects, the Small Speaker Overdrive and the Design Drive. Both of these are great sounding pedals, but also offer some unique features that I think suits this topic well. All right, let's get into it. Have you ever dialed in a tone at home or while you're playing by yourself, and then when you get in a live situation, maybe in a rehearsal or on a gig, and you can't seem to hear yourself? Maybe you're not cutting through, maybe your tone sounds muddy, or just in general sounds very different than it sounded when you were playing by yourself. Maybe you hit a gain stage, and rather than popping out in the mix, it almost seems to disappear, even though it really is getting louder. A lot of these problems come from dialing in a tone and not thinking about the bigger picture or the context. Now, the first big idea I want to talk about here is this idea or this thing called masking. If you're not familiar with this term, it's essentially where you have two different instruments and maybe they sit in the same range EQ-wise, and they essentially hide each other a little bit, or they take away clarity, they take away definition. They've got this similar range, and so EQ-wise, they're sitting right on top of each other. It just gets really cluttered in this range. One good example of this is in mixing. A lot of times the bass drum and a bass guitar will do this to one another, where it just gets kind of muddy. You have a hard time differentiating each one. They don't have their own space. So a lot of times what a mix engineer might do is say they boost 80 hertz in the kick drum, and then they will take out 80 hertz in the bass guitar. This helps differentiate the two while still, maintaining a fullness. But if they can kind of separate them EQ-wise, then it's going to give each its own place in the mix. Now, with guitar more specifically, we can run into issues with the bass guitar and a regular guitar in our low end. So this is why a lot of times we don't want to use quite as much low end as we might want or we might think we need, because it gets in the way of the bass guitar or even keys or synths. All right, so I've got my Les Paul plugged into the Design Drive, plugged into my Dumble clone. Now, obviously, this is going to be a big, clean sound, right? We've got humbuckers plugged into an American-style amp that just has, these really rich cleans. I've got a little breakup going on when I dig in. So how I've been using the Design Drive is I've been kind of dialing in a sound and then using this width control here in the middle. I find that it really does a nice job of cutting out some of that low end, some of that low mid stuff that I don't necessarily need in the context of a full mix. Now, there are different ways to dial this in with other pedals. If you have a low control, or even using maybe an EQ and dialing out some lows or low mids, getting some of those frequencies out of there are just going to help your guitar cut a little more. It's going to not clutter things up with either the bass or other guitars, or maybe even synths, keys. A lot of these things have a lot of that information going on, so we don't always need all of that stuff in our guitar sound. All right, so I'm going to slowly bring this width control back and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, I do find when you start to really thin it out, you might need to bump the gain up a little bit. I think it's just taking away a lot of frequencies at that point, so it's not driving it as hard. I think you'll find when you initially start thinking about your tone this way and dialing in these types of tones, they might feel brighter than you're used to, or they might feel thinner or nasally, mid-rangey. And I think there's a balancing act with that, but some of it is that you have to train your ear. You have to kind of get used to those types of sounds a little more. And then also, trying to listen back and kind of listen to the big picture and how your guitar is sitting in it. I think you'll find as you kind of get rid of some of that low end information and start running things maybe a little brighter than you're used to, that you'll find that it cuts through the mix, it's sitting really nice with everything, and you're not getting this kind of cluttered, muddy sound. Ultimately, it's going to help focus your guitar in the mix so that it can be heard more clearly. One way that guitarists have been finding their place in the mix now for decades is by using small amplifiers. Not only do small amps provide more compression and overdrive at lower volumes, but they typically also have less low end and are a bit more focused sounding. They don't necessarily provide a full range sound, but kind of limit the amount of frequencies and limit a guitar's place in the mix. Now, I think the Small Speaker Overdrive does a great job in replicating these tones, kind of in the range of a tweed champ type of sound or other sounds that you would find from small amplifiers. But the thing that I like about this pedal compared to others similar to it is that you really do have full range control of the lows and the highs. It doesn't just always have to make your sound smaller. You have plenty of lows on tap that you can get a really great full sound, but if you want to dial that back so that you have a more limited, a more focused sound, you can definitely get those tones as well. One way that I really liked using this pedal was on that short demo that you heard. It was in the rhythm tracks, and it just added a nice brightness, a nice kind of sparkliness to it that didn't take away from anything else. Being able to dial back these lows here really helped with that, but you can turn them up and get a really full sound too. But here's kind of a similar tone that I used for that sound. Now, obviously, how much lows we have in our sound kind of depends on what else is going on, So with this, I might, if there's a lot more guitars or there's a lot of, other information happening, I might dial that low back, or maybe it's a trio and maybe I'm going to want a little more low end information, or maybe I want things not quite as bright. It's all going to be situation dependent. Unfortunately, there's never going to be one thing that always works perfectly in every musical situation you find yourself in. It's going to take a lot of experience, a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error to figure out what sounds work and what sounds come across the way you want them to. That being said, hopefully this video was helpful for you and helps you think about your tone in a little different way that helps you get better sounds in whatever musical context you find yourself in. Also, big thank you to Great Eastern Effects for sending me the Small Speaker Overdrive and the Design a Drive. I find that both of these pedals are super versatile and have lots of great sounds in them, but are also easy to use. They're easy to get good sounds out of right away. That's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, leave me a comment. All of those are easy ways you can help support the channel. All right, until next time, I'll see you out there.